Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Facebook Live chat discussion on child abuse and neglect, in observation of National Crime Victims' Rights Week. My name is Courtney Cochran, and I am a social worker in the Criminal Division's Victim Services Unit at the Delaware Department of Justice, and I will be the moderator for today's chat. Throughout the week, the Delaware Department of Justice will be providing resources and tips with regards to preventing and speaking out about child abuse and neglect. In today's chat, we'll discuss the signs of child abuse, ways to prevent child abuse and neglect, where victims or loved ones may find resources, and how to report child abuse and neglect. Remember, if you suspect child abuse and neglect, you must report it. Call the Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline at 1-800-292-9582. If you have any questions during the chat, please submit those in the comments below and we'll be sure to answer them. Let's get started. Today, we have three panelists: Abby Rodgers, the Director of the Delaware Department of Justice's Family Division, Karen DeRasmo, the Executive Director of Prevent Child Abuse in Delaware, and Haley King, Deputy Attorney General in the Delaware Department of Justice's Child Predator Task Force. The first question I have is, what is child abuse and neglect?
So I think I can take that lead off with that. Good afternoon, everybody. So there obviously is a statutory definition of what child abuse is that we use for those types of prosecutions, but generally it is what you think it is. It is physical injury, force. There is, unfortunately, aspects of torture or sexual abuse that can be involved, maltreatment, and negligent parenting. All of those can combine one or more to result in child abuse.
What are the signs of child abuse?
So there are many signs, frankly, and you can have one sign, no signs, or all signs. It really just depends on the situation. But some things to always look for are unexplained injuries is a big one, or changes in behavior. You'll see a child change radically, become more introverted, become more quiet, become more emotional, just shut down. Just a change in a child's behavior is a great clue that something is going on. Or fear about going somewhere. They traditionally always loved going to soccer practice and now they don't want to go no matter what, or that they don't want to go home, that there's some concern about going home and they had traditionally not had an issue with going home. You know, I think a lot of it, you can look at it and does a child suddenly seem depressed? You know, are they taking care of themselves anymore? Are they eating properly? Are they sleeping? Things along those lines.
The next question is for Abby and Haley. How do each of you in your roles help child abuse victims and their loved ones?
I can start and give Abby a break from talking. My name's Haley King, and as Courtney stated, I work in the Delaware Department of Justice Child Predator Task Force, and that task force actually encompasses our Internet Crimes Against Children unit here in the state of Delaware. Every state in our country has an Internet Crimes Against Children unit, and what we really focus on here is the online exploitation of children, and really any technology facilitated crimes against children. That can include, it's not limited to, but the manufacture and distribution of what was commonly known as child pornography. We prefer to call that child sexual abuse material these days, as well as the online enticement of children. So your, solicitation of a nude photograph from a child and things of that nature that take place over the internet. So our unit actually handles every complaint that comes in from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children related to crimes of that nature. We handle every tip that comes in to the state of Delaware. We also handle referrals from state police troops and other agencies in Delaware that come in from citizens related to crimes of that nature. Sorry for that. We handle the case from the ground up, from the investigation through the prosecution of the case, working with victims' families in cases where we do have identified victims. Unfortunately, in some of our cases involving the distribution of child sexual abuse material, there are often hundreds of victims that might be unidentified that we aren't able to actually reach out to and assist. But just the same, they are victims because we don't have their name, their birthday, their favorite color in front of us doesn't make them any less of a victim to our unit.
That's well said, Haley. That reminder that each of those children in those images is a victim, even if we don't know their name. I oversee the family division at the Department of Justice, and one of the things that we do is we have a unit that works with the Division of Family Services to help on to really handle cases involving allegations of child abuse and neglect. Ideally, we try to help a family figure out a way to get back on track and reunite the family and give them more resources and create stronger, more resilient families. But then certainly in some instances, the children do actually have to be removed from the home and they're placed in foster care until hopefully we find them a new adoptive family. The numbers in Delaware are actually staggering when you think of what a small state that we are. In 2019, there were 21,000 reports to the child abuse hotline that Courtney mentioned at the beginning. 21,000. Now, certainly not all of those pan out to be legitimate or prosecutable or enough information to investigate. But I think it's a good and a bad thing. One, I think it's great that people are calling the hotline when they see a problem, because that's critically important to abate this horrible problem, is that you have to say something. But also it tells us that there's a lot of kids that we're worried about and a lot of kids who are at risk. In 2019, there were 1,000 kids who spent at least one day in foster care. So that tells us we really have a problem with keeping our kids safe and protected from abuse and neglect. I don't know if this is a good segue into what Karen does, but what we talk about here all of the time is once the kids arrive in our life or Haley's life, unfortunately, the damage is done. There's been abuse and neglect. One of the best things to know about child abuse and neglect, though, is that it is preventable. And there are things that we can do as a community, as individuals, that really will make a long-term difference with children and families.
And the same question now goes to Karen. How does Prevent Child Abuse Delaware help victims of child abuse and their families?
Well, thanks for the question, Courtney, and thanks for having me with you today. I think, in answering that question, really want to talk about the fact that we try to get ahead of the victimization of children. And so, as Abby just mentioned, what we are doing is prioritizing the opportunities that we have to strengthen families so that they can do a great job of raising their kids. And we also feel a very big part of our job is keeping the issue out there so that people are willing to talk about both the issue and parents are willing to talk about their need for assistance. We want to get to families before they get to Abby or, heaven forbid, to Haley, and really see that there is an opportunity to do that by strengthening families' economic situations, by giving people information about development and what actual expectations can be of their children. We also understand and appreciate the need to do a great job with early education opportunities and helping families to have access to those. So we try as much as possible to get ahead of the issue and to assure that the abuse and neglect does not occur. As Abby mentioned, we get so many calls into the hotline, and some of those calls do end up resulting in cases, but there are so many other families that, with some support, we might be able to assist them in a way that would allow that child to stay with the family and to be safe and to have, the kind of childhood that we hope that they will. So it's a little bit different focus. Certainly, if we find that a child has been victimized, we do everything we can to put them on the path to healing. which typically has to do with, providing them with counseling and some other services. But, we really want to be able to help families to do a good job of raising their kids in a way that is nurturing and that keeps them safe.
And where can child abuse victims or those who know of child abuse report it?
I think, Courtney, you just mentioned the reporting line. That is a telephone number that takes you directly to folks at the Division of Family Services. And if you have the suspicion that a child is being abused, you are required in Delaware, since all of us are mandated reporters in this state, to make that phone call and to give the information that you have to the person at the hotline, so that, if necessary, an investigation can be completed.
And if I could
Sorry, go ahead, Haley.
Sorry, Abby, if I could just jump in on the technology front. Any tips related to internet crimes against children can also be reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, either at cybertipline.org or phone number 1-800-THE-LOST. I think that information might be shared in the comments below our live presentation today, but those are also resources that can be used when crimes are internet related.
I was just going to add that sometimes these are things that we see, and sometimes these are things that children report to us. And so one of the things that's important is to really listen when a kiddo is trying to tell you something and to believe them. Despite the myths that may be out there, kids don't make this up. And when they confide in you and try to tell you what is happening, the best thing you can do is just listen and believe, first and foremost. If you shut them down, then they're never going to tell again. And that's where long-term harm happens and the abuse can continue. The best thing is to end the secrets and to get the truth out there, and for us to do our job to try to keep kids safe. But we can't do it unless they have a venue to tell what has happened.
Thank you. It looks like there are no questions at this time from the audience, but if at a later point, those who are watching a replay of the chat have a question, please submit them below and we will get back to you. Well, that concludes today's discussion on child abuse and neglect. I'd like to thank our panelists for taking the time out of their day to provide resources and information to those who watched. Please remember that as part of National Crime Victims' Rights Week, the Attorney General's Facebook page will be raising awareness of various crimes while providing tips and resources. Please tune in tomorrow at 12 p.m. for a Facebook Live chat discussion on elder abuse. Thank you for tuning in, and please stay safe and healthy.